bleeding purple and gold. From the heart of Los Angeles, this is the LakersNation.com podcast with your host, Trevor Lane.
Welcome to today's show. As always, we are powered by CLNS Media and LakersNation.com, your home for everything Lakers. Today's show is brought to you by Lightstream. Head over to lightstream.com/Lakers for a special offer. Excellent credit consolidation company can help you take your credit cards and put them all down into one low payment at a low interest rate. Go check it out. Lightstream.com/Lakers. Well, we are in the middle of the Lakers preseason, a lot going on, plenty to break down, even though the last game they had against the Clippers wasn't the most exciting game. Still a lot going on in the world of the Los Angeles Lakers. So joining me today is Alan Sliwa of ESPN. Make sure you guys go follow him on Twitter at LakersTalkESPN, and also follow his Instagram account. Great follow on there as well. Alan, thanks so much for jumping on this Sunday evening.
You got it, Trevor. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Hey, so Alan, we were just talking before we came on air about how this last game against the Clippers, it just wasn't that exciting. As the game ended, I was thinking, man, we didn't learn a whole lot from that one, but I feel like overall for preseason, we've seen quite a bit from this team, haven't we?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Yesterday's game was not a good way to summarize what we've seen so far in preseason play. And granted, it's preseason, and it's so easy to catch yourself as a fan getting frustrated about certain plays or saying, man, why aren't we 3-1 rather than 1-3? But the reality is, they're strategically trying to, try different lineups. This is a team that's never played together. So you got just a number of different players that have zero experience playing against each other. So, so far we've seen some good Rondo, some good Javale McGee. I think Brandon Ingram's had some great moments. Obviously, LeBron James is wearing a Laker jersey. When he starts playing 25, 30, 35 minutes, I'm sure that's going to obviously be key for the whole team. But so far, 2 more to go against the Golden State Warriors, and I'll be curious to kind of see how things wrap up.
Man, I think so far that the big surprise for me has been Javale McGee. I mean, he has been – you're used to hearing Javale McGee and his connection to Shaq and a Fool, and him making these ridiculous plays on the floor and people kind of treating him like a joke and everything. This guy's no joke. You look at the way he plays out there and what he's done, and I've really been impressed with the way he rolls to the rim and the gravity he has. Other teams really have to take account of him rolling to the basket. Alan, you were there at the games. You've seen it up close. What have you noticed from JaVale, and are you surprised by what you've seen from him?
Well, first off, he was the best for Shaq and a Fool. I think he single-handedly made that show what it is today on NBA TV. No, but obviously the last couple of years, him playing with the Golden State Warriors, getting that championship pedigree of just understanding, what it is to be. And I know he's a little deeper in his career, but I think playing with organization like the Warriors and obviously NBA champions, I think he's learned a lot over these last couple of years. And that's something that's a little bit of a surprise, I would say, so far in the preseason. McGee is averaging, I think, 10 and 7 so far. He had one game where it was maybe 2 points and 3 rebounds, which kind of brought down some of that average over those 4 games. But the reality is he's been fantastic for the Lakers. I mean, I'm a little surprised, not shocked by it, but obviously from a defensive standpoint, he's been really kind of controlling the interior at times when he gets that opportunity where the Lakers are so thin at 5. I think he's done a good job there. And then he's doing just a lot of lob work and cleanup work, and I know that's been part of his career, but I think more impactful over the first 4 games than I would have thought of. I
think it's amazing that, and this is maybe a little bit scary at the same time, but heading into preseason, Lakers fans were unsure whether JaVale could even be a starting caliber center in the NBA at this point, because he's only played 10 minutes a game on average about over his last, 4 or 5 seasons. So we haven't seen a ton of JaVale out on the floor. And now I feel like if you go online and if you ask Lakers fans, hey, what happens if JaVale McGee is out? That's like a doomsday scenario. If JaVale McGee gets hurt, everyone is definitely concerned about that. Like if something happens to him, if he's sick, if he's not able to play, it seems like the team is kind of lost. Do you think they're relying too much on JaVale McGee? Like I'm looking ahead at these games against the Warriors, and I wouldn't mind seeing JaVale sit out a game or two here just to make sure he's ready to go for the regular season.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting spot that the Lakers are in, because last year where you felt like, okay, you had Brook Lopez, you obviously had Julius Randle playing a lot of center.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Lakers that's probably the position that they have the least flexibility on, especially Mo Wagner being out right now. And, we're not sure. Is he going to play more of the 5 role, which he most likely will, but he's a rookie. So how much do you really want to depend on, a rookie that's hasn't played an NBA game and will have played 0 preseason games by the time it's all said and done? I know the Lakers want to go small ball. I know there's, the thought process is they're going to push the ball up and down the floor and everything else, but I think it's showing how critical it is to have a big that you can still, they say the center position is evolving and it's kind of becoming extinct. It's still important. There's still a lot of teams out there that want a 7-footer that can play defense and run up the floor like JaVale McGee does. Don't forget, too, one of the things I think has stood out, you heard JaVale McGee yesterday post-game, Lakers lose to the Clippers. He talked about it. He said that, look, defensively, we're not where we need to be. Rebounding, we could do better. You don't want to give teams second-chance points. And McGee's, that's kind of his – those are kind of the blueprint of JaVale McGee. You want him playing defense and grabbing rebounds. I think they might have to depend on him a little bit more than, we originally thought.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we were in Las Vegas for Summer League, Alan, we were talking about how the Lakers might have to rely on Mo Wagner, and now he's hurt. And I mean, he's a rookie. He's behind the 8 ball at this point. He's certainly going to have to play catch up when he does get healthy. So you don't know if you can really rely on him. And then Ivica Zubac, we recently found out, Harrison Fagan wrote this up the other day, that Ivica actually has been sick. He had a virus, and so that was part of the reason why his energy level was so low during preseason so far. Do you think, because I know that there's a lot of negativity surrounding Zubac right now amongst Lakers fans, do you think he can get back on track and be that solid backup big that they need? Or is Luke Walton pretty much going to have his hands tied and have to rely on small ball anytime McGee's not in there?
It's tough watching. I think Zubac, lost some weight during the offseason, which he definitely needed to. But there's some players that they're not springy. They're not, I feel like sometimes his feet are cemented to the ground, and just getting up and down the floor. I don't say this to be mean, but he looks sometimes slow motion compared to some of these other players in the NBA. And it's more just like a timing thing. Where the league is today, the Lakers really want to push the ball. You're not thinking of Zubac. You're thinking of all these other players on this Lakers team. Mm-hmm. You're thinking of Ingram and Kuzma and Lonzo and Hart. You're thinking of these guys sprinting up and down the floor. He doesn't come to mind. So I think that might not be the option that we one time thought that he might be for the Lakers. And I think as the game continues to just speed up and that center position evolves, I don't know if he might just have bad timing of being in the league, because it's not that he's not skillful. It's just that his skill set is a little bit different than it might have been, 10, 15 years ago.
Sure. I mean, hey, we've seen Jahlil Okafor, right? I mean, coming out of the draft, he was expected to be a dominant big man, and it turns out the game has just kind of passed him by, that back to the basket big. There was hope that Zubac would be kind of a Marc Gasol style big, that he was going to have enough touch from the outside, not necessarily going to go out and shoot threes like Gasol recently has, but that he was going to have some touch from the outside, that he was going to have some passing ability, that he could block shots at the rim, and he can kind of do those things, but I think he just hasn't done them well enough. Hopefully this whole illness thing has been a bigger issue than it's been reported, and he's got a little bit more to him. But you're right, he does look slow out there on the floor. I think it was last year there was a story that came out that his vertical, they mentioned, was like a 12 or 13 inch vertical. And I thought, no way, there's no way an NBA player actually has a vertical that low. And then I watched him a few times specifically jumping, and I went, oh, holy crap, he may really not get off the ground. That may be pretty real.
Trev, that's why I think it's kind of interesting. Mo Wagner yesterday, pregame, just watching him kind of shoot around, and he's trying to, obviously practice when he can to just stay in shape and everything else. He's out there with Mark Madsen, and he's coming off screens, and he's pulling up from the baseline. He's hitting 22-footers, and then he's coming off another screen and hitting a 20-footer. That's today's NBA. And, we saw a little bit of him in the summer league. He's very active on defense. He's very talkative, certainly a guy that has a ton of confidence. And I'm not saying that this is going to translate in the league and he's going to become a player right away. But I think part of the strategy when Pelinka and when Magic and when Luke, when they're looking at that, this specific draft class, when they're going into what position are we in need of, I think they must have been thinking the center spot, and they must have been thinking that, look, this is where we are today and where the league is today. Hopefully Mo Wagner can turn into that player where he becomes a backup center, and then we'll just kind of see what happens in the future. But I'm probably not as confident on Zubac as maybe some people are, or maybe like most Laker fans, I fall into that category.
Yeah, at this point, we have to hope that he can turn it around somewhat and at least be serviceable. Otherwise, the Lakers are playing small ball. And so far, the small ball thing, I mean, it's just preseason. And you can tell when the Lakers are out there, everything is off a little bit. All their cuts, all their reads, a lot of things are off. There's a number of times each game where the other team scores just because the Lakers defenders both, two guys rotate to the same person or nobody rotates at all. It takes time to figure all that stuff out, especially in a switch heavy defense like the Lakers have. But I don't know. I'm a bit concerned about the small ball defense and their lack of rebounding right now. That's one area that we've seen them really get exploited during preseason. In fact, the only game they won was the one game where they actually rebounded fairly well. Otherwise, I feel like they're getting pushed around quite a bit on the boards. Is there a solution to that, or is this just sort of a symptom of being a small team?
Well, it's actually kind of funny. LeBron was asked that same question about rebounding. This was after the Sacramento Kings game. And he said, look, we certainly have some size deficiency if it comes to center, and JaVale McGee's not in there, but we also have a number of different guys that are small forwards, power forwards, and point guards that rebound very well. So I think when Lonzo comes back, you might now all of a sudden have another 6'6" player in there that likes getting in and getting rebounds. That's going to help. I think guys like, Brandon Ingram and Kyle Kuzma and KCP, these are all guys that will kind of crash the basket as well. And obviously LeBron included in that. Lakers, it's going to have to be a kind of a process by committee. You might not have one player that dominates the boards, but you might have 4 or 5 guys averaging 5 or 6 rebounds a game. And that's what they're going to, literally that's what they're going to need. There are times that I think watching the Lakers play so far, there are many times they look very confused. Actually, as we're talking right now, Spectrum's replaying the game. Why I have it on, I'm not sure, but I have it on. But like there are plenty of moments, and I know it's tough to sometimes take that fan hat off and just say, okay, it's just preseason basketball. But there are plenty of times where I'm like, why we should be clicking a little bit better right now. But the reality is it's just 4 games, and I think the more practice that they get together, Lonzo comes back, grabs some rebounds. The hope is that, collectively they do a better job on the glass.
Yeah, it is going to take time, and it does take, just experience with the team playing together. But you're right. I mean, I would like to see the team clicking a bit more. I mean, it's definitely concerning, especially given the schedule that they have coming right out of the gate. Once the regular season starts, they have some really tough teams that they're going to be playing. I think one thing that this rebounding issue has shown, and this was a guy who took a lot of flack last year for his rebounding, is that Brook Lopez actually had a bigger impact on the glass than I think a lot of people realized. And Julius Randle too, of course. Those guys allowed the guards to come in and grab some of those boards because other teams had to deal with them. Lopez did a really nice job of at least keeping his man off the glass, even though he took a ton of flack for not having big rebounding numbers. He does a nice job boxing out. And then Randle is obviously a force on the boards. And so you remove those two pieces, and anytime JaVale's not in there, you're asking, say, Kyle Kuzma to be that big rebounder. He's just not that physical player that you had from a guy like Randle. So it changes the whole dynamic. It's a lot harder for guards to come flying in and grab those rebounds when you don't have bigs down there who are boxing out and clearing out space. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Lonzo changes things there. How Rondo can do when he's diving down into the paint, because we know he can rebound. How all these guys adapt to this changing team and how they come up with a way. Hopefully it's a rebound by committee situation, like you said. And if they can all grab 5 rebounds a game, then they should be just fine. Alan, let's chat a little bit about Rondo real quick. So you mentioned him as one of the guys that has been pretty good so far in this preseason. We've been hearing amazing things about his leadership. You've been there. What are you seeing from Rondo that's really impressing you out there on the floor and off the floor as well? Because we're hearing a lot about that too.
he controls everything, Trevor. I mean, he literally, like, you know, sometimes people talk just to talk. Mm-hmm. He has meaning and purpose behind everything that he's saying, and it's almost like he can't stop himself from saying what's on his mind because he's just that knowledgeable about the game. No, Kuz, you got to do this. Bi, why'd you do that? Even in the game he didn't play against the Sacramento Kings, what was that, on Thursday? Mm-hmm. I think it was. That game that he didn't play, Coach Luke Walton kind of joked around. He's like, Rondo was up the entire time. He was basically coaching as if he was the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. So, look, he's averaged so far in summer league or in the preseason just under 10 assists a game, and it's not like he's out there taking a ton of shots. That's not Rajon Rondo's game. Yesterday, after the game, a reporter asked him, "Did you know that at halftime you had 8 assists and 0 shot attempts?" And he said, "I didn't know I had 8 assists." So basically what he's referencing is, I'm not paying attention to that stuff. I'm just trying to win basketball games. That's the thing I think I respect most about Rajon Rondo. All he cares about is winning, and that's it. So whatever his role is, whether it's to take 0 shots or to be more aggressive on offense or to sit on the bench, I think he's going to literally do whatever this team needs him to do. And a player that's won an NBA championship, and, we obviously know because the Lakers had some battles with the Celtics, he's a well-respected player in the league, and he's got a lot of knowledge that maybe we don't see it all in the first year with Brandon Ingram or with Lonzo Ball, but maybe in 4 or 5 years, a lot of that stuff will, start to click as they get more experience in the game. I think Rondo was one of the more underrated signings in the entire NBA this offseason.
It's certainly been impressive the way he controls the flow of the game. He has that. He understands where everybody should be at all times. And not just that, but he understands where everyone on the other team should be at all times. He knows exactly what's going on out on the floor. And it's really impressive when you watch him kind of directing traffic out there. I think the one thing that is underrated about his game, and has been much maligned, is his shooting ability, but he's actually shot pretty well. It's a tiny sample size, but he's shot well from 3 in preseason. And I've made a few comments about this on Twitter about how important it is that Rondo goes ahead and takes those threes, that he fires them up when he's open because it helps keep the defense honest. And if he can shoot a decent percentage, he's a hesitant shooter, but I'd really like to see him switch his game up a little bit in that regard and at least take the open threes when they're there, when it's in the flow of the offense, which he's going to know exactly when to do that. And when I make these comments, the Boston guys jump in and they say, you know what? No, Rondo has been this way forever. He's always been this guy that's a reluctant shooter. You're never going to get him to shoot threes. It's not going to happen, even though he knows that he needs to do it to stretch the floor. It's just not going to happen. I don't know. I'm kind of optimistic. I'm hoping that Luke's fast-paced offense will embolden Rondo a little bit to pull the trigger a little more from the outside. Are you seeing any of that? Are you noticing that he's being a little bit more willing to shoot the 3? And do you think that's something that's sustainable?
It's funny, Trevor. He hit a 3 yesterday, and where I was sitting was like the perfect angle to watch his 3. Sometimes it just happens to be exactly the right angle of where I'm sitting. And what he shot at, I turned to one of the media members to my right. I was like, he's actually got really good form. For a guy that doesn't shoot very often, he has fantastic form. I don't know. Do I think Rajon Rondo is going to come out and start taking 5, 7 3-pointers a game? No, I don't think so. I do still think that he's going to be that player that just wants to set everybody else, wants to set everybody else up. It's almost like he's the player that he makes the steal. It's a 2-on-0 fast break. There's no defense there. And the guy trailing, he'll probably end up passing it to him, and that guy will score. That's just like Rondo just doesn't care about shooting. I know that could be, in a sense, obviously can hurt the team in a way. Sometimes you have players. We talked about it with Lonzo. There was a lot of times Lonzo last year maybe relied too much on the 3 and wasn't more aggressive to trying to get to the basket. And once he got to the basket, he didn't want to shoot. He wanted to kick it out. And the better shot was Lonzo shooting that basket, within 5 feet of the basket. And instead of KCP taking an 18-footer or whatever the case is, I think it's tough to – I don't know if there's anything there to make me think that Rondo would be more aggressive on offense. I don't think that his just style of basketball and his knack for the game, I think that's just going to be he's going to be the guy that doesn't pull up, and Kuzma's going to be the guy that has no problem pulling up. I feel like just some of these players, especially Rondo, for as long as he's been in the league, I'm not sure that at this stage in his career he'll be a player that just starts shooting more than he has in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that he at least starts taking a few. I wouldn't expect him to get in that like 5 to 7 range or anything like that. But I like say Jason Kidd.
Take a few, keep him honest. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Take a few. I mean, Jason Kidd towards the end of his career, that's all he did was shoot threes, and I don't think Rondo's gonna do that or anything. But at least keep the defense honest and keep them stretched out. There were a number of times where JaVale was diving to the rim, and it was always Rondo's man coming to help, and the Lakers wouldn't pass the ball to Rondo. This was in the second game against the Nuggets, and the Lakers just would completely skip Rondo because they knew he wasn't going to shoot it. I think you have to make that pass. You have to give it to him. You have to let him go ahead and shoot those because he can hit them, and he's shown that. Right now, he's actually shooting 80% from 3 in preseason. That's not going to continue, obviously, but still, I think that he's got to fire away there. You mentioned, speaking of firing away, you mentioned Kyle Kuzma. I'm a little bit, I know it's just preseason, but I'm a little bit surprised that we haven't seen more improvements from Kuzma. We heard all summer, I talked to his trainer, Clint Parks, and he was just raving about all of Kuzma's improvements and how much better he is and how much better shape he's in. I don't feel like we've really seen that growth. And that doesn't mean that he hasn't grown, but I just feel like we haven't really seen it out on the floor just yet. Any insight into what you think's going on with Kyle Kuzma right now? Is it just moving to the center position, changing role you think that's throwing him off, or what's the story here?
Yeah, sometimes you see players, they might be pressing a little bit. He put in all this work in the off season. He was in that Lakers training facility, spent so much time there, put on some weight, looks as good a shape as anybody in the league. And then all of a sudden, LeBron James comes, and Rajon Rondo come, and JaVale McGee is a part of the team, and Julius Randle's not there, and Brook Lopez, and that some of that familiarity that you had with some of these different players are now gone. You're playing a different role than you were playing a year ago. You're trying to kind of mix and match with all these different players that are on the roster. You're coming off the bench for the most part, and a guy like Lonzo Ball is, or not even Lonzo Ball, a traditional point guard isn't in that position or that role with you. I think there's a few things going on, but I couldn't agree more. I do think I'm a little underwhelmed with Kuzma so far, and it is, it's kind of funny to say it, right? It's like everything we say, we always preface, I know it's preseason.
Right.
It's kind of like a natural thing to say.
Yeah.
But the reality is there's still games, right? So there's a lot you can learn from some of these preseason games, and I'm sure Kuzma right now is learning from these preseason games. I have a feeling that when Lonzo comes back, and there's a very good chance he plays on Wednesday, like you mentioned, in Vegas against the Golden State Warriors, I do think that's going to have a significant impact for him. He needs to have a point guard in that lineup with him that can just help set up guys like Kyle Kuzma. I think there's also going to be times where LeBron is in the game with him, where there's more attention to LeBron James, and Kuzma will get some looks. I think he'll be fine. But to just look at the first 4 games, I'm a little surprised how slow Kuzma has started as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's just kind of pressing a little bit, simply for the fact that he put so much work in this summer that he wants it all to kind of come out in the first couple of days, and that's just not going to be the case.
That's a great point. We do see that happen with young players from time to time, where they're trying to do too much. And at the pace of the NBA game, sometimes you have to stop thinking about all the stuff that you want to show off and just play the game. And I don't know for sure if that's what's going on with Kuzma, but I think that's a great observation, Alan. That could very well be what's happening here with him. You mentioned Lonzo, and we know that Kuzma and Lonzo have had a wonderful connection over the last year that we've seen them together. It all started developing in Summer League in 2017. Just they seem to know where each other is going to be out there on the floor. Aside from Kuzma, how do you see Lonzo returning? And hopefully, fingers crossed, hopefully that happens on Wednesday. How do you see that impacting this Lakers team?
Well, I just want to get him. It'd be great for him to just get some reps and get some playing time. Yesterday in the pregame show, again, somebody asked specifically about, do you think LeBron and Zoe will get a chance to play together in this preseason? And he had said that was right when Luke announced LeBron's not going to play tonight, Zoe's not going tonight. right when Luke was asked that question, Luke did say that yes, they will play together, most likely on Wednesday. Look, I think one of the downsides of the Lakers so far this preseason has been their second unit. I think when the second unit has come in, Lance is running point at times, sometimes BI, sometimes Josh Hart, players that I'm not saying they're not capable of running point guard, but imagine if Lonzo's in that lineup and he's the one that's setting everybody else up. He's making Brandon Ingram's life easier, or he's making Josh Hart's life easier. Kyle Kuzma, Lance Stevenson, Michael Beasley. I think Zoe's going to be significant. I think eventually he's going to find himself into that starting lineup. I think eventually he's going to build off of that 10, 7, and 7. And, we're going to have some highlights this year, and Lonzo Ball is going to be involved in that, whether it's his athleticism going to the basket or it's him throwing up lobs to some of these other players. It's I don't want to say easy to forget how impactful, Lonzo Ball can be, but that's a point guard that is a very, very unique player in this league. He fills up the entire stat line. He's not asking for, shots where a lot of these other players want to take the shots. He's very, very smart. He's got a knack on defense as he does on offense. I think it could be significant when he comes back. The only question is, obviously, what Lonzo are we going to get? And then hopefully Lonzo is healthy for a long stretch of time where he could start getting into a rhythm and all these players with him could get into rhythm as well.
We're going to take a quick break to talk about your credit. Have you ever looked at your credit card statement and been shocked by the interest rate? I know I was. When I was in my early 20s, I got into credit card debt, didn't quite understand how it all worked, and I fell into the trap that a lot of people in this country do, and I overspent. And then I wound up with a mountain of debt and no way to really pay it all back. Well, I was fortunate to work with some credit card consolidation companies that really helped me out, and Lightstream can do just that for you. You can actually roll all of your credit card debt into one monthly payment at a lower fixed interest rate. Lightstream offers credit card consolidation loans from just 5.89% APR with autopay. That's lower than the average credit card interest rate of over 18% APR. You can get a loan from $5,000 to $100,000, and you can even get your funds as soon as the day you apply. Lightstream believes that people with good credit deserve a great interest rate and no fees. And here's the part I really love. Lightstream plants a tree with every loan they fund. So you're not just helping fix your credit situation, you're also helping the environment, and that's a great thing. My listeners even get a special discount on top of Lightstream's already low rates. And the way you get that discount is to go to lightstream.com/Lakers. That's LIGHTSTREAM.com/Lakers. Subject to credit approval. Rates include 0.5% auto pay discount. Terms and conditions apply, and offers are subject to change without notice. Again, visit lightstream.com/Lakers for more information. Are you concerned at this point with his ability to stay healthy? I mean, it seems to be a trend now where when Lonzo gets hurt, it seems like it takes him longer to come back than what the initial prognosis is. I mean, we heard 100% by training camp, he'll be good to go. And obviously that wasn't the case. And now it's, we only have 2 games left in the preseason. We still haven't seen Lonzo. Is that something that you're worried about moving forward here?
It's funny, Trevor. Think about how the game has evolved, where before you basically played through all these injuries. It didn't matter. You played through injuries. And now all of a sudden it's turned to where you are extremely cautious with your young players who could be franchise players. I get it. I get it on both ends. Luke mentioned, I mean, he could have probably played in Anaheim yesterday against the Clippers, but he thought, look, we don't play again until Wednesday. That gives him another 3-4 days to kind of rest up, make sure he's good. They're going to have some practices where I'm sure it'll be more and more physical, and they've said that he's looked great in these practices. So there is some concern. How can't you have concern? He missed 30 games in his rookie season, and then this year he pretty much didn't get to play 5-on-5 all summer, and he's missed the entire preseason to now. So I don't think there's a way to not have concern. The only way that concern goes away is he plays the next 40 games before he misses a couple for whatever reason. So I think it's very natural to have a player. Markelle Fultz, there's probably some concern. Joel Embiid, you never want to see that guy go down with an injury. There are players in the league that have been injured in the past or started their career injured as young as they are, that it's just naturally to think, oh man, is this guy, is he injury prone, or is it just kind of a small stretch of bad luck and he'll be fine?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and hopefully it's the latter there. Hopefully it was just a little bit of bad luck early on. Hopefully his body has matured a bit. He's able to handle an 82 game season a little bit more, and Lonzo will be just fine, because I think that, and you touched upon this a little bit, Alan, Lance Stevenson has been playing point guard for the second unit. We saw Brandon Ingram play point. He was phenomenal, by the way. We'll talk about him in just a minute, but Brandon Ingram played point guard for the first unit, and then Rondo was the backup point guard during one game. Overall, this team has not been able to play the way they're designed to play. The Lakers set up this team with the idea that Rondo and Lonzo being kind of in some ways similar style point guards in terms of being able to throw the hit ahead pass early, get guys into offense early on, try to find mismatches, not being shoot first point guards. That allows a little bit of continuity, and that allows Luke Walton the flexibility to sort of rotate players in and out, whether it's in the starting lineup or in the bench lineup. So we haven't been able to see this Lakers team really get played the way they're supposed to, because you're missing that other piece. You're missing that other point guard, and you're asking a guy like Lance Stevenson to go ahead and play point guard, or these other players. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see, once this team has both Rondo and Lonzo, how the first and second unit operate. Because right now, and I think you've noticed this too, whichever unit doesn't have Rondo out on the floor, whether that's the first or the second unit, they seem to struggle a little bit with their positioning, where they're supposed to be. The ball movement seems to suffer. I'm seeing a lot of contested mid-range jumpers whenever there's not a true point guard out there on the floor. And nothing against Alex Caruso. I don't think he's the answer there either. We've seen that in preseason. So I think, and I'm sure you'll say the same, Alan, I think it's going to be really interesting to see those two units really come to life once you've got Lonzo back in the mix.
I don't think you miss a beat. It's like having two quarterbacks that have the ability to just, you don't miss a beat. And I think that's going to be the big advantage that the Lakers, eventually Lonzo's going to find his way in the starting lineup. Mm-hmm. And Lonzo Ball is going to be in there, athletic player, can push the ball, can push the pace, up and down the floor. If Rondo is your backup point guard, and now all of a sudden Rondo's coming in and he's with KCP and Lance Stevenson and Josh Hart, just throwing names out there, right? And Mo Wagner and Kuzma, whoever it is coming off the bench, you now got your quarterback. You got the quarterback in that first unit. You got that quarterback in the second unit. That's significant. I think they'll be able to kind of keep that pace up that they're intending to have this entire season. And I think there's going to be a lot of times where the structure that we're not seeing now will be the strength that the Lakers have, because you have two point guards that can really call out certain plays, can huddle the guys up during times where things aren't going well, and really talk to them about, this is what we got to do. And not every player is that, but I think Lonzo and Rondo can obviously be that for the Lakers.
Alan, you mentioned, Brandon Ingram playing point guard, and these guys, Lonzo and Rondo kind of being the quarterbacks and being those guys that run things. Is there a way to have Rondo out there, to have Lonzo out there, and have LeBron out there, and still let Brandon Ingram initiate some of the offense? I think that's going to be one of the big challenges for Luke Walton this year, because I don't think it's a coincidence. The game the other night against Sacramento where Ingram just goes off and he has 31 and 9, that came with him playing point guard. And I think back to last season, and probably the best stretch of Ingram's career came with him being the primary ball handler, the point guard, when Lonzo was out. And I don't think there's a coincidence there. I think there is something to it, that having Ingram initiate the offense kind of raises his game to another level. So the Lakers put together this team where you've got all these ball handlers, you've got all these guys that can create plays. Is there going to be enough for Brandon Ingram to hit that next level? Is there enough playmaking opportunities, you think, for him to continue to grow his game? Because I think you would agree, and we talked about this during the summer, that Brandon Ingram hitting that next level is going to be one of the most important indicators of the Lakers' success this season.
It's funny, Trev, is kind of watching Ingram these first couple of games, you saw instantly the impact a guy like LeBron is going to have on Brandon Ingram. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is all the attention goes to LeBron James. and Brandon Ingram now starts, cutting up and down the floor, kind of puts himself in a position where he can benefit the most from having a guy like LeBron James on the team. I think Ingram's going to be in a fantastic position because you've heard Magic say this as well. If Brandon Ingram grabs a board, he's just going to go. If LeBron James grabs a board, he's going to go. If Rondo grabs a board, if Lonzo grabs a board, there's multiple players who could bring the ball up the floor. And it's not like you just have to go find your point guard and that's your only chance of getting into your offense or running a fast break. Ingram is going to benefit from that because Ingram at his 6'9", what's his wingspan, 7 feet or whatever it is.
7'3".
He's going to be able to grab a board and just take off. And if him taking off either puts him in a position to run a little ISO basketball or yesterday you saw him posting up a little bit more as Avery Bradley, somebody who is smaller trying to guard him, or he's going to eventually run the point position. Even though Rondo is on the floor, he can do that as well because he grabbed the rebound and took the ball up the floor. I think it just shows kind of his versatility and what he's going to bring to the table this year. And look, we've talked about it. All these guys need to step up. But if B.I. steps up the way he's capable of stepping up, that could, he could be the second best player on this team. And that could take the Lakers to a level that they're all hoping they could go to this year.
Agreed. Yeah. And you know what? I mean, yeah, Brandon Ingram has that ridiculous, it's almost a limitless wingspan, right? I mean, he's got 7'3" wingspan. It's nuts when you see him out there on the floor. I think about the play in the Sacramento game where he's guarding the ball out of bounds and they couldn't inbounds the ball around and they couldn't pass it in. I think it was four passes in a row. And then finally Ingram gets the steal. That was amazing and ridiculous. His arms just never stop. And I've seen LeBron James. It seems like he recognizes, and I haven't seen any quotes with him saying this just yet, but it feels like when you watch him out there on the floor, like he recognizes that Ingram is the guy that he's really got to get going. Because if he gets Ingram to hit that next level, then this team's really going to take off. Like you said, I mean, the chemistry that they already have, it almost gives me chills when you see LeBron making these no-look passes to a cutting Brandon Ingram, who's recognized the other team, is paying so much attention to LeBron that it's open. It's so amazing, and I think it's a really good indicator of not just LeBron's ability as a basketball player, but his intelligence as a leader as well.
Yeah, after the Lakers beat the Sacramento Kings, and Ingram had 31 points, and LeBron walks off the court, and he's talking to Mike Trudell from Spectrum Sportsnet and says that, kind of in a sense, we complimenting how good Brandon Ingram will eventually be and how good he already is. And then he gets into the actual locker room and you just hear comment after comment of him really just, I guess you could say shooting high for Brandon Ingram of what he can be in the league. And then B.I. says that, in a nutshell, I don't need anybody to. He's his own critic, and he has such higher expectations than anybody can have for him. LeBron can teach a guy like Brandon Ingram. Just think of it this way, and this is the best way to put it, in my opinion. Let's say LeBron plays 4 years with the Lakers and plays out, his entire contract, and Brandon Ingram is a part of those entire 4 years. Ingram would be 25 years old by the time LeBron James is, done playing for the Lakers. He'll be not even walking into his prime yet. So think about the step he made from his rookie year to his sophomore year. Now all of a sudden he's going to be playing in situations and predicaments where these games are so meaningful and they're important and you're trying to make a playoff run. And if Ingram's a part of that whole thing, he'll be as prepared as any other player in the league to walk into the prime of his career being 25, 26 years old by the time, obviously LeBron's done. I think it's an exciting time that we're in, obviously, for the Lakers. And, you can still have all these young players and you can still depend on them. And I think Ingram will depend on more than anybody else.
Yeah, Ingram is, gosh, that's such a great point about him, his age. A lot of people forget, right? He's only 21. He just barely turned 21 years old.
21 years old.
I mean, it's ridiculous. You see the things that he can do out there. Ingram is just so versatile and you're right. I hadn't thought about that, Alan. I hadn't thought about the fact that Ingram will be just 25. Maybe he's the guy. We keep talking about, next summer the Lakers are going to land another star. They're going to get a guy like Kawhi, who's a little bit younger of a star, that as LeBron starts to fade a little bit, as father time takes its toll, you're going to have a Kawhi Leonard or somebody like that that's going to really still be going strong. Brandon Ingram, man, in 4 years, who knows what he's going to be? I mean, he could very well be a one of the top players in the NBA by that point, given his trajectory and what he's been doing right now. So that's a great point. This is really, really exciting stuff that we're seeing from him, and hopefully that's something that's going to continue. Alan, we've bounced around to a ton of topics here, but I want to end with this because it was something that I thought was going to be a major battle heading into preseason. And obviously preseason isn't over and nothing is set in stone, but who do you believe is going to be the Lakers starting shooting guard come the opening day for regular season for the Lakers, October 18th?
I still think it's going to be KCP, and I don't have any, this fantastic reason behind it, but I do think another veteran in there, somebody that's played, obviously multiple years in the NBA. But I think part of that is also that bench, if you're throwing in to start the season, because let's say Lonzo is still trying to come back from the injury, you got Lonzo, you got Josh Hart, you got Kyle Kuzma, you obviously have Lance Stevenson as well. I think there's something there to have those three players who are all drafted in the same class kind of playing together. And that's not to say that Josh Hart won't get more minutes than KCP, and that's not to say that Josh Hart won't close out games, because I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, that he's closing out games or more games than KCP is. But I think KCP probably starts the season as a starter. And the Lakers, with obviously all these options that they're going to have this upcoming year, what a luxury to have. You almost have two guys in every position that you can go with.
Who have you been more impressed with? Personally, I've been more impressed with Josh Hart so far. So I was a little surprised that you said KCP, but I totally get that, because that's the way Luke Walton thinks as well. He looks at things in terms of who's going to fit best with a given rotation, with a given group of guys. But what's been your take on the whole KCP versus Josh Hart battle? Do you think, like I do, that Josh Hart has kind of won that battle so far?
Yeah, look, Hart just looks like a fearless competitor. He, I think, maybe a little bit more controlled on offense, a little bit more selective on some of his shots that he takes, gets to the basket. And I don't think we realize just how strong Josh Hart is when he does get to the basket. I mean, what was that a couple of days ago? David West was tweeting, kind of joking around about how Josh Hart was really holding his own down the post. And I think Josh Hart, I think Coach Luke Walton had talked about he's stubborn on defense, in the sense that when he's guarding a big, he doesn't want help. He doesn't want Rondo sneaking over. He wants to be left alone because he feels like he can, obviously guard these players that are bigger than him. Josh Hart's going to be, one of those guys that you feel will be in the league for 10, 12, 13, 14 years, because he does maybe not one thing great, but he does a lot of things very, very well. And again, even if he's not starting in the games, trust me, we pay so much attention to who's starting, but who's playing the bulk of the minutes and who's in crunch time. I think actually that player that we're talking about in that shooting guard position, I do think it's going to be Josh Hart for most of those games.
Yeah, Josh Hart has been really impressive, and I think that's a carryover from winning the Summer League MVP. Obviously, we had right up close seats. We were right there on the baseline for most of their Summer League games, Alan, and we got to see Josh Hart really dominate in Summer League, and now that's kind of carried over. And I think at this point, Hart has been good enough to where I know his ceiling isn't as high as Ingram or Kuzma's or Lonzo's. I wouldn't put him in that category, but I think he's hit the point where you have to consider him part of the team's young core. I think he's got to be the young core isn't a group of three anymore. I think it's a group of four at this point.
The great way to measure that is when the Lakers when there were talks this summer about going after Kawhi Leonard and the other names that they were, obviously being kind of discussed around the Lakers. You heard from reports, guys like Wojnarowski and some of these other, obviously really, really good reporters, that a lot of teams like Josh Hart, and there's a reason for that. And, we might not talk about him because he's not the sexiest player, or he wasn't drafted number 2, or he didn't, Kuzma came out of nowhere type of a thing. Ingram's had more got an extra year under his belt playing for the Lakers, and we see some of his skill set. But Josh Hart's a solid player. That's most certainly a guy. If down the road Lakers are making decisions and they're in a position where they're a trade away from competing for a championship, I'm sure they'd find a way to try and keep Josh Hart on the roster, and I'm sure other teams would try and pry away Josh Hart from the Lakers.
Yeah, that's really telling when you see other teams that are valuing a player like that. I know that he's kind of opening the eyes of a lot of Lakers fans right now and becoming more and more ingrained into this team. And I almost get, and they're not the same in many, many ways. They are very, very different players, different personalities, all of that. But I get a little bit of kind of a Derek Fisher vibe, just in terms of his role and his fit with the team and what he can do and all of that. And maybe that's a terrible comparison, but to me, I kind of get that vibe from him.
No, that's fair. I was watching so many Laker games over the years. D. Fish was one of those guys that said, what do you need me to do? You want me to play defense? I'll lock up whoever you need me to lock up. Played bigger than his size, was not afraid of the moment, can hit big shots if needed. And obviously Josh Hart has a lot of work to do to become the type of player, but Derek Fisher was that guy. Derek Fisher was, not too many people talked about Derek Fisher. They were talking about Kobe and Shaq and Robert Horry hitting a big shot. But as Fisher's career went on, he just became a critical piece that when it was crunch time, there was no question about it. Derek Fisher was in the game.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm hopeful that that's going to be Hart's role moving forward. Like you said, maybe not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily matter who starts. It might be a question of who finishes the game. And it does feel like Josh Hart may be in that role, maybe alongside KCP. Maybe both of them do. We're going to have to see how that all plays out. Alan, man, thanks so much for taking all this time here on a Sunday evening and hopping on here with me and chatting Lakers basketball, especially coming off of that dreadful game against the Clippers.
It's not too hard, Trevor, to just talk Lakers basketball. I think we both enjoy it. So thanks for having me on, man.
Hey, no problem. And guys, make sure you go follow Alan on Twitter at Lakers Talk ESPN and check out his show Lakers Talk on ESPN LA 710. It's a great one. It's something I download the show when they put it up on podcast format. I listen to it every week. It's an amazing show. So definitely go check that out. Alan does an awesome job there. And guys, make sure you head over to LakersNation.com for all your latest breaking Lakers news. We have all kinds of stuff going on there right now. Tons of great video content on our Lakers Nation YouTube channel. So make sure you guys check that out. And of course, don't forget to go follow me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. Until next time, see ya.